And we can just jump into the workshop. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask questions as we're going through. And then also there'll be time for questions at the end. So this this presentation is specifically for the neighborhood grants, but we'll go over general grant writing, good grant writing themes. And so I think it should be helpful even if folks are applying for other grants besides the neighborhood grants. So like I said, we did our introductions. My name's Alex. Okay, so starting off talking about neighborhood grants, there are two neighborhood grants that are currently open. One is the Omaha Neighborhood Grant Program, ONGP, and that is put on by the Omaha Community Foundation. The deadline for that grant application is March 1st, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. However, I feel like I should also let you all know that there's also the mayor's neighborhood grant, which that application is currently open and that closes March 11th. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, just because it is a neighborhood grant that's currently open. In some ways, they're really similar, and in some ways, they're very different. So today we're going to be focusing on this Omaha Community Foundation Omaha Neighborhood Grant Program, ONGP. So for the ONGP, individual grant awards are for up to $5,000. And that's the same for the mayor's grant too. You can ask for up to $5,000. The average award size is about 2,500. And they have about $80,000 in funding every year to disperse. So just to give you an idea of how much is out there. The applications are open for the Omaha Neighborhood Grant Program from January 1st, and then March 1st is the deadline. Like I said, the mayor's neighborhood grant, however, is open until March 11th. For ONGP, the deadline is March 1st to have your application in, and then you'll be notified more like in May and awarded in June. So for the mayor's grant, it moves a little bit faster. You get awarded in April and or you get notified in April and awarded in May. But for ONGP, you're gonna expect to be getting your funds in June and probably expect not to hear back until sometime in mid-May. So that part can always be a little bit hard because you wanna move forward with your projects, you wanna know what's going on, but expect to be getting your funding in June. So that being said, you don't want to apply for any projects that you need to do before June. And then grant reports are due December 31st, and you have to have your project finished up by December 31st. So you're basically looking for projects that you can complete between June and December, or portions of projects that can be completed between June and December. To be eligible for the ONGP, your group has to be in Omaha and you have to be listed in the neighborhood directory. So I'm going to send these slides along I'll have a follow-up email tomorrow, which will have these slides along with links to the grant application and the neighborhood directory. So if you're not already in the neighborhood directory, tomorrow you can just follow the link to sign up. It's pretty easy. If you're not a neighborhood association, so there's a couple different options for how to sign up in the neighborhood directory. One is you can sign up as a neighborhood association, but if you're not a neighborhood association, you can sign up as a community group. And then they're going to ask you for your boundaries. If you're a neighborhood association, your boundaries are going to be pretty kind of like stiff. It might be like Dodge to Cumming, 30th to 33rd Street. But if you're a community group, you could say, we work in East Omaha, we work all over Omaha, we work in South Omaha. So you can set your own boundaries. So you're going to need to be doing your work in Omaha, registered in the neighborhood directory, and then you also need to have at least 3 active organizers in your group. So the Omaha Neighborhood Grant Program, they really want to see folks hit on themes such as leadership development, capacity building, and collaboration. So when you're getting ready to design your project, or as you're thinking through your project, think about what sort of leadership roles are going to be created through this project. How can this project increase the capacity of my group? And who could I work with? Who could I collaborate to increase the impact of this project? So leadership development could be, I think sometimes that can feel a little bit intimidating, but something that's leadership development could be just someone saying like, yeah, I'll coordinate volunteers, or even somebody saying like, you know what, I'll take the lead on this grant proposal. That's leadership development. Um, so thinking about that, and then also like some opportunities for leadership development would be, say that you have somebody in your group that is a really good woodworker, and part of the project is going to be that you're building a bench. If that person who's a really good woodworker is like teaching others how to build the bench, then that too could be considered leadership development for that person who's sharing their skills. So when we think about capacity building, we're thinking about how this project is going to lay the groundwork for your group to do more and to do it more effectively. So sometimes a project itself is going to be really obviously capacity building. Like if you're building a tool library, for example, like having that tool library will increase the capacity of the group because now you have tools on hand. In that example with like the woodworker who's sharing their skills, skill sharing is capacity building, because the more people you have that know how to do a certain task, the more options you have for that task to get done, or it could get done twice as fast, which is increasing capacity. So you really want to think about building those ideas and those themes into your project if they're not already there. However, I think a lot of times the best way to highlight these themes is just to think through what your project's going to be and identify the leadership development and capacity building that is already there. And so we can talk about that more too if there's any questions. And then there's also collaboration. I think it's always a really good idea to think about like who you could work with to make the project more impactful. So whether it's another neighborhood association, another nonprofit, or even like a local business. And so collaboration could be something where it's like you're going to have a picnic and a local business is going to donate 24 cupcakes. Like that's collaboration right there. But it could also be, you know, these two groups are going to work together to do a project that, I don't like, what would be a good example? I'm thinking of like maybe you want to give classes and you could collaborate. Like if you wanted to give seed saving classes, you could collaborate with a community garden and give the seed saving classes at the community garden to reach out to the people in that community garden. So just some examples of themes that might already be in your project or ones that you're going to want to build in. So as you're developing your projects, some of the things that One Omaha can help with is we do these grant writing workshops, but we also do visioning sessions. So if your group is unclear on the project that you want to do and you need to kind of build consensus or figure out like what the group needs right now for the phase that it's in, we can hold visioning sessions. And that'd be like 3 or 4, you know, at least 3, possibly more people getting together, brainstorming what your goals are for the year, thinking through what projects will help you to accomplish those goals, what the action steps are going to be to accomplish those goals, and then what sorts of budget items you're going to need. So that's the sort of thing we do in a visioning session. And if anyone is interested in that, you can reach out to me. We also provide one-on-one support. So if you have any questions about the grant application as you're going through it, or you just need somebody to like look over your answers to give you a little bit of feedback, you can reach out for that. Also, you can just reach out to me. If you need any assistance with budget narratives, a lot of times this can be intimidating to people. We're going to talk about creating a budget tonight, but if that's something that you want help with along the way, you can also reach out. And then One Omaha also serves as a fiscal sponsor. So if you don't have an organizational bank account, and you need to use One Omaha as a fiscal sponsor, we can do that, and you can just reach out to me to make that happen. So both the mayor's grant and the Omaha Community Foundation grant, as well as the Elevate grant, they can't make checks out to an individual. So One Omaha can serve that as that liaison, as that fiscal sponsor. And if anyone has more questions about that, I'd be happy to talk it through. And if you need any help when you're doing your grant reporting, again, reach out and I can provide some feedback on that too. Okay. So for project develop, are there any questions right now before we jump into project development? Okay. So things that you want to think about before you even start the application process is you want to make sure that you have your core group of 3 people. Like we talked about before, part of the eligibility for the grant is to have 3 key organizers. Also, though, when you're doing grants and grant writing and projects and reporting, it's really good to have a team so that all the work doesn't fall on one person's shoulders. And also, especially in like volunteer organizations, to make sure that the amount of work is sustainable. And then you want to be ready to receive funding. So what I mean by that is that if you don't have an organizational bank account, you're going to want to reach out to secure fiscal sponsorship, if it be from One Omaha or another organization. Because you don't want to go through the entire application and then at the end realize that you can't even receive the funding. And then you're going to want to familiarize yourself with the grant, and that's why we're here today. And you'll also need to secure permission from city or property owners. So if you're the property owner of where the project's going to take place, then it's all good. But if you're planning to do the project on public property or private property that you don't own, you want to make sure and secure that permission ahead of time. And then I also think it's really important that with your grant writing team, you create a shared folder for the process. So in your shared folder on like Google Drive, you can keep track of draft proposals, timelines, and budgets. So one thing I recommend doing is when you open the application, copying and pasting all of the questions into like a Google Doc, and then writing your answers in that Google Doc. And then when you get done, after you've wordsmithed it the whole way through and done all your grammar checks, you can copy and paste your answer back into the application. So this is really important. You don't want to just work in the application because sometimes it will crash and you don't want to lose all of your work because the website crashed. But especially if you're working on an application really close to a deadline and there's a lot of people using that website, it can lead to the application crashing. I haven't seen that necessarily happen a lot, but I know that it has happened. So happening once to one person is enough. It's a really good idea to keep track of, to do your application in a Google Doc. Additionally, it's a good idea to do things in the Google Doc because when you go to apply for another grant in the future, you can reference what you wrote in this application, which should make it a lot easier for future applications. And then it's also good for like transparency purposes to have timelines and budgets. And then also just for shared work. So if you have a team and somebody is like the project manager or the budget manager and they get sick, having all of that information in one place where everybody has access is good for transparency. And then at the same time, for just picking up where you left off so that you don't have, if something does happen and folks need to step out of the project for a little while, you don't really lose anything. Except, of course, the wonderful company of the person who had to step out. So we got the before you apply, and then next, thinking about your project development, you're gonna want to, you have to come up with a project. So it's good to start with a vision. How are you selecting this project? So a good place to start is like what goals you have, and things that might help you accomplish those goals. So if a goal is to increase food security, then yeah, maybe having a garden is going to help to accomplish that goal. And then you're going to want to think about like, why did you select this project? Why do you think this is going to help you accomplish your goal? And it's okay, you don't need to write down what you think somebody else would say. You just need to write down why you think this project is going to help you accomplish your goal. And then you want to think about the short-term impacts of the project as well as the long-term impacts of the project. So that's something that folks will want to see in a grant application. And it's also just really good to like have that in your mind, like what you're trying to accomplish so that you can reference that throughout the application. Okay, and then next you're gonna wanna create a timeline. So you know that your project is, the project that you have funding for is gonna need to happen between June and December. But your timeline might go all the way back to February 8th when you attended a grant writing workshop to prepare for the application. And there might be things that you need to do before the actual June date. So you're just gonna think through your project and think like, okay, what do I have to do first? Well, the first thing I have to do is apply for the grant, and that is in February. The next thing I have to do is coordinate, recruit 4 volunteers. So I know I'm gonna do that in April. And then I know that in June, I'm going to start like planting. Or in this case, the example is like in May, I'm gonna buy supplies. In June, I'm gonna finalize the details of the event. And in July, I'm gonna hold the event. So you're brainstorming through like all of the things you need to do and in what order you need to do them and on what time frame it's going to make sense. And then you'll also want to think about ongoing maintenance. So who's going to take care of this project after you get started? And then thinking about how you're going to build that leadership development in. So the types of things that are leadership development again can be like acquiring skills, so thinking through like what sort of organizational and communication skills are going to be necessary for this project. Maybe you already have them and you're sharing those skills. That's leadership development. Maybe you're acquiring those skills. That's leadership development. Both of those are also capacity building. So again, anytime you have knowledge sharing, volunteer coordination is leadership development. Every time you create opportunities to get involved, that is also leadership development for those who are going to be getting involved. And again, when you're creating opportunities to get involved, that's also capacity building because you're engaging more people. And then event coordination. So thinking, how is this funding going to help create more opportunities to get involved? Doing the actual event coordination is leadership development, and then creating the events or using this funding to have more events where people have the opportunity to get involved is also capacity building. So other examples of capacity building are engaging more people, creating leadership roles is also capacity building, identifying resources and skills in the group. On the one hand, it's leadership development, and on the other hand, it's capacity building, sharing and acquiring new skills, creating a new meeting place for people to come together. So like a community garden, either installing it or getting it revamped that could be considered capacity building because now you have this resource. And then in general, just creating resources that will aid in future efforts, like a tool library, a newsletter, or a website. All of that's capacity building. And I think also if you're, collecting data to decide how you want to do projects in the future, you can also consider that capacity building, because this data is going to help you to direct your efforts so that you have to, it's not so that you have, but so that you don't have to put in as much work in the future, because you're collecting the data now to design the programming that will be effective, so that so it's capacity building in that way, because knowing what to do makes it easier to move forward. I hope that was clear. Okay, and then thinking about building in collaboration. So just thinking of ways that you could partner with other neighborhoods or community groups that border you, that have similar goals, or that could provide something to enhance your project. So if you're having a party, maybe a community garden can provide fresh produce, or a local restaurant could provide prepared foods. Maybe there, maybe somebody could bring their mobile art gallery, or if you've got folks that are doing like issue awareness, or different types of transportation access, music, entertainment, kids programming, those are all great opportunities to collaborate. And then you can also think about like, what could you provide to somebody else? So maybe this year, you're not quite ready for a project, but you could provide something to enhance somebody else's projects. And then also thinking about, maybe how you could use the grant funding to raise awareness about what your group can provide for others. So it could be with this eye towards future collaboration. Okay, are there any questions about that before we jump into creating a budget? All right. So, creating a budget, the number one thing that you need to do when you create a budget is, first, you've got your project idea. Like, this is the thing that I want to do. Second, you think through all of the steps to make that project happen. So I gotta buy, I have to make the correct purchases, I have to plan things out, I have to recruit volunteers to help me, and then I have to finalize details with those volunteers. So thinking through all the things you need to do. As you think through all the things you need to do, write down all of the things that you will need. So if you're going to be purchasing supplies, what are those supplies? Write them down. And if you're going to be having an event, how much, are you going to be renting the space? If you're going to be renting the space, how much does that cost? So after you have the list of everything that you'll need to make the project happen, that's when you do your research. And so you actually go through and you look up like, okay, I'm going to need 3 shovels. Shovels cost $20 each. I'm going to need $60 for shovels. So that's where you start with your budget. Other tips for creating a budget are that you want to have a budget coordinator. This can possibly be the most important role in the entire organization, because the budget coordinator is going to be reimbursing people for purchases they make. They're going to be keeping track of the receipts, and they're going to come in really handy when it comes to grant reporting and you have to report on everything that you purchased. Like we said, you're going to want to make a list of everything that you'll need to do the project. Then you're going to do your research. As you're doing your research, round up. Very rarely does the cost of things go down. Sometimes that does happen. But also what happens sometimes is that the price goes up. So if a shovel says it's $19.50, round up to $20, because, or even like 22, because there might be taxes that you're not factoring in, or you might not be able to find that exact deal when you go to actually make the purchase. Now, you're going to make a very detailed budget for yourself, but when you get to the application, your budget doesn't need to be too detailed, but it can't be too vague. So for example, if for your budget you need 6 shovels, 3 hoes, 2 rakes and a pallet of, or let's say you need all these tools, right? And you also need seeds and a garden hose. You could put all of those in garden supplies, right? And then maybe you're also going to be like hosting an event, and so you could have like event space rental, food for event, that sort of thing. It's not too detailed, but it's not too vague. You don't want to be so vague that it's just going to be like project cost $5,000, but you also don't need to list out every single thing. You can just put things in categories. Um, so as I'm, making the list of all the budgets or everything that goes in my budget, I usually do that in a spreadsheet. I do have budget templates available if folks want something to start off with. I keep track of everything in that spreadsheet. And that's where, so in my spreadsheet and in the template that I would share with you, I'll have my very detailed budget, the cost of everything, and then I have a place to link a picture of the receipt so that when I go to do my grant reporting later, all of that information is in that spreadsheet, and it saves me hours of time at the end of the year. That being said, have a designated place for physical receipts and a designated email for online receipts. So this is kind of what the budget coordinator would be in charge of, is if different people are going out and purchasing things, you want to be sure to, snap a picture of that receipt immediately, send it to the budget coordinator's email. That's the best way to do it. And then maybe, you also need to like keep your receipts in a folder and drop that folder off to the budget coordinator. You just really want to keep track of all those receipts. Because it doesn't often it doesn't really happen a lot, but there is the chance that, when you do your grant reporting, someone would want to, would have a question about a receipt. And so you just want to be able to produce that. It's very rare. I've never heard of that happening with the ONGP, but you just want to be prepared so that if it did happen, it wouldn't be an issue for you. With the mayor's grant, they do want you to send in a picture of all your receipts when you do your budget report. So for that one, it's very important to have a picture of all the budget, a picture of every receipt. Yeah, and so pretty much just, I have a lot of bullet points there about taking pictures of receipts. And then, so for matching funds, in this application, they will ask for not a dollar for dollar match, but they'll ask about matching funds. And they'll say that you can provide matching funds could be provided through other types of funding or through in-kind donations. So if if your project, matching funds just means, and you don't necessarily have to like raise funding to match this project. Like if you have an organization that say already has $3,000 and you're applying for a grant for $3,000, those $3,000 you already have could be your matching funds as long as they're going towards the project in some capacity. But they also allow for in-kind matching funds. And so that's where they ask volunteers that are part of the project to quantify their time as like $23 per hour. So for that, you're just going to think through all of the like uncompensated, unpaid volunteer time going towards this project. And then think of how many hours that would be. If it's 2 people spending 4 hours equals 8 hours, right? One person spending 12 hours equals 12 hours. So 8 plus 12 is 20 hours times 23 is like $460. So so those 20 hours is worth $460 of in-kind matching funds. That is something that tricks people up, and it's at the very end of the application. So I just want to give everyone a heads up about that. So when it comes to documenting for reporting, we talked a lot about the receipts already. Very, very, very important. And And so you just want to make sure to understand the grant timeline. In this case, for the Omaha Neighborhood Grant Program, the deadline to submit your grant report is December 30th. For the mayor's grant, the deadline is January 31st. So you just want to be sure to understand that timeline and know that you do have to finish your grant report by the end of the year for the ONGP. So this says 2023, but projects need to be completed by the end of 2024. So you only want to ask for funding for aspects of the project that can be completed during that timeline. Be ready to submit a report at the end of the year and track your spending as you go. And that will help to avoid any issues. So the application, real quick, we'll just look through the questions that are on the application. The first thing you're going to do is introduce yourself. They're going to ask you to provide details about your organization. So you just want to have a short background. Our organization was founded in this year. We do these things, and that's it. We're founded in this year. We do these things. This is our mission. They're going to want to know the location of the organization and the boundaries. And so like with the neighborhood directory, that can be, we work in East Omaha, or it can be, we do work between Dodge and Cumming, 30th and 33rd Street, if it's, that specific. And then they're going to ask for key leaders. That's those 3 key organizers. And I usually just fill in who's ever helping out with the grant writing or is going to be specifically involved in the project that I'm asking funding for. Then they're going to ask, what's your vision? What's the title of your project? Come up with something catchy. You might want to think of using capacity, engagement, collaboration, and leadership. Like we said, those are some of the main themes they want to see. So it's also really nice to have that in the title of your project. And then they're going to ask, what was that project vision? What is the need? How did you select this project? And what do you hope to accomplish? They're going to ask where the project's located and who owns the site and whether or not you have permission from the site owner. And then there's a whole question about leadership development. And in that leadership development question, they want you to describe how this project develops leadership skills of neighborhood residents. So they're really going to want to see how this is improving things for folks in their capacity as neighborhood residents. So you want to think of that like neighborhood centric aspect to this project. So then they're going to ask, and also other things to think about is like, how is this project identifying and developing the skills of new leaders? And how is it helping existing leaders to become more skilled? Kind of what we talked about with this theme earlier. And then they've got a question on community building. Describe how this project promotes conversation and collaboration between neighbors as a means of developing shared priorities and increasing neighborhood growth and engagement. So basically, like, how is the neighborhood going to be better because of this project? So, what sorts of community leaders were involved in the project selection? How is this project encouraging individuals to take action in your neighborhood? And how does this project invite people to participate and share their strengths to widen the circle of participants? So this is going to be that like capacity building aspect. And also just thinking of like, if you're developing a resource or doing a project, if you're developing a resource or, holding a workshop, I should say, how is that resource or that workshop going to increase collaboration and like build collaboration amongst neighborhood residents? And they'll ask about neighborhood enhancements. So in what ways does this project enhance your neighborhood? If it's bringing fresh produce into the neighborhood, that's pretty straightforward. A mobile art gallery obviously would bring culture to folks and make viewing art more accessible. And then you can, one way to think about the neighborhood enhancement questions beyond just the obvious is, what is the result that you want to see? And then municipal relationships, so they're gonna ask, how could this project strengthen relationships with the city of Omaha? And in this case, they wanna see that when appropriate, you're working with the correct city agencies and in accordance with any permits or approval processes that would be necessary. Like I said, we got a couple folks from the city hopping on the phone, hopping on this call. Later, so if there's any questions about that, we can go ahead and address that. So yeah, we'll go ahead and address that when they all get on. And then just kind of last thing is that like talking about those matching funds again. They don't require a dollar for dollar match with this, but they do ask you to show matching funds with those in-kind donations. So that could be in-kind donations can be, like we said, valuing every volunteer hour at $23.06, or anything that's being donated can also be considered an in-kind donation. And then they're gonna ask about community collaboration. So how you can use this project to support a vibrant community by raising awareness of other groups, and what kind of support you can offer. And okay, I guess that last slide kind of came out of nowhere. Okay, that being said, are there any questions right now about the application in general?
So it looks good if you work with your neighborhood association.
Yeah, if you're not a neighborhood association, and it would be really good to collaborate with the neighborhood association, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess if I collaborate with the neighborhood association, do they need to apply and I come up under them?
If you are in the neighborhood directory and you're going to be the lead on the project, then I think it would make sense for your organization to apply. Another way to think about it is, another way to go about it could be if the neighborhood association was interested in the community garden, you could just provide them the space and, and then they could apply for funds to do in the space whatever it is that they want to accomplish. But if you have an idea of what you want to see happen, and you just want to like bring the neighborhood association in to like build the capacity, or increase engagement, then I would say that it would make sense for you to apply for the project.
Okay, and then you said that for me to be in the directory, I mean the church should be a part of, or is a part of the community, but we wouldn't be. At least I don't think we would be in the neighborhood directory.
Yeah, if you're not in the neighborhood directory yet, then you just need to sign up for it, and you could be a community group.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a question, Alex. If
Yeah.
the project takes places in, let's see, different neighborhoods, do you need to have a person on your board for each neighborhood?
Do you need to what?
To have a person from each neighborhood, like a leader?
Have a person from each neighborhood for what purpose?
So if your project take place in different neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
do you need to have all the neighborhoods leaders on your project, or is fine you just have like one or two of them?
Oh, I think that like probably for the application, the best thing to do would be to identify the neighborhood leaders that you've been in discussion with. And then, just to kind of be like, yeah, so the idea is that we're going to go to 6 different neighborhoods, and we've been in discussion with these neighborhood leaders from these places. And then have them as involved in the project as it makes sense to.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a helpful answer?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions right now? Well, real quickly, we have folks from the planning department, the parks department, and public works. It doesn't seem like there's any specific questions for you all, but if you wouldn't just mind introducing yourselves and letting folks know the kinds of things that they could reach out to you for with the neighborhood grants, that would be great. Mariana, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name is Mariana Forall. I'm the neighborhood planner in the planning department. I manage the neighborhood directory. So when you update your entry or register for a new group, it comes to me. I can help you with understanding if you're better if you're better as a neighborhood association or a community group. Help you with your registry. The other things that the planning department could that I could help with the planning department is understanding, or feel free to reach out to me if you've got questions about if you need a permit for a certain type of building, if your building or project, if you need a permit for a certain type of project, if your project needs any type of setbacks or any kind of things like that. I think is that probably about what would be appropriate, Alex?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But yeah, neighborhood directory is a big one. And then, yeah, if you're building anything and you're unsure of what that entails.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, Katie, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Katie Swanson. I'm a landscape architect and park planner with the Parks Department. So I would say like the one biggest thing to keep in mind when you're doing projects on either park property, boulevards, trails, or other public property is before you put in a grant application, talk to us first. Because we are going to be able to kind of help you guide what you're doing for your project. We can give you some tips on what is appropriate for a park, what we're not going to approve in a park, stuff like that. So I have and also we can also write you a letter of recommendation to include with your application for the grant, and that will generally help with the grant. So some of the items that generally work well for these kind of grants that would go in parks would be like benches, picnic tables, grills, tree plantings, public art, which there would then be another layer to go to the Public Art Commission for approval. Playground improvements, although that's more of a larger project that this grant might be a small part of. Stuff like little free libraries and dog waste stations. Those are usually pretty good improvements to use these grants on. Some of the things that we do not allow in public parks, we don't allow community gardens in the parks. We don't allow community message boards. We don't allow little free pantries. So library's okay, pantry's not okay. And we generally don't allow lighting except in very specific circumstances. We have had grants for lights in the parks before. And then we also don't allow bounce houses. That's more for events that are happening in the parks. Another consideration is any sort of installation costs and permitting fees have to be included in your project. So the Parks Department basically is not going to help out with any of those kind of items. Let's see. And yeah, I guess otherwise, if you have any questions about working with the Parks Department, feel free to contact me. Alex can throw my email in the chat. So otherwise, I also help out with the Public Art Commission. So if you have anything as far as public art that would be going on city property, you can also contact me about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie.
Mhm.
Heather, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, got to get my mic unmuted, of course. I'm Heather Tippy Pierce. I am the General Services Manager for the Omaha Public Works Department. So I run the administrative support division of our department. A lot of times we'll see requests from neighborhoods regarding, specifically regarding improvement projects in like traffic calming islands, or that may be in kind of that space between a sidewalk and the curb line, so that right-of-way area. We oversee the encroachment permit process. That's a free permit, but it basically allows us to have a contact person should something get overgrown, or if an improvement project's coming in and something needs to be removed. We have that contact on file then with that permit. And like Katie said, those types of uses are allowed, but it's good to coordinate with us in advance of a grant application to make sure that we've had conversations about making sure that what you're planning to purchase won't impede any Americans with Disability Act accessibility, sight distances for traffic safety or pedestrian safety. We look at various improvements in the right of way to make sure that they're not going to impede general mobility, so like multimodal use. Another thing that we get contacted a lot about are kind of, again, coordinating with Public Arts Commission is murals, community murals. We like to be involved with those discussions to make sure that the materials that you're using are going to hold up over time, that we're aware of those murals going in so that our anti-graffiti our graffiti removal team doesn't accidentally do harm. While those are in progress, we can give recommendations about coatings to make sure that art going up doesn't get vandalized, or if it is, it can be kind of secured behind a coating. Other things that we get questions about, as far as, working with neighborhoods or monument signs or banners. Those are kind of use specific. Again, we typically use that encroachment permit process, which is available on our website, and I can post that link in the chat for you. It's a great tool if you're thinking about doing work in the right of way, so that we can coordinate with all the appropriate departments, because sometimes it might be related to traffic, or sometimes it might be related to parking and mobility. We can help serve as that clearinghouse for you through that process. That's kind of a lot of ideas in a very short amount of time, but I will definitely put my email address, and also we have a general inquiry email address. So if you have questions about, hey, our neighborhood's thinking about doing this, but it might impact the sidewalk or it might impact the right of way, we can get you routed to the right place through that general PW reception inquiry email.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That being said, does anyone have any questions right now for Mariana, Katie, or Heather?
I have a question or comment. Could we get their phone numbers as well so we know how to contact them?
Yep.
Also, I'm not sure how to word it, but even though I'm on private property, if there is extra lighting or something that might be closer to Ames Avenue, would I have to go through the city? Or if I wanted to put up a fence?
Fences are a thing that do need permits through the planning department. There's a couple of different, I'm not familiar with them myself, but there are some regulations about fences, like material, like the transparency of it, if it's a chain link fence or a wooden fence, and the height. That is something that you would need to go to the Parks Department for. It depends, or I'm sorry, not parks, public, oh my God, planning. The lighting is a different situation. I don't know if that's something that the planning department would do, but maybe my colleagues know better. I guess I will say what my understanding is that if it's lighting like on your own property or property that you have permission to work on, I don't think that there would be any issues, but if it's lighting in a park or if it's like lighting in maybe like the neighborhood entrance, like if you have a subdivision that has like a monument sign and you want to put lighting there, like that is something that you would need to run by the city. But across the board, if you have like a proposal or a question, and feel free to send it to me and I can run it through the planning department and give you feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for anyone from the city or for myself?
I have a few questions about public art that Alex, you can share the emails, then I can reach to them.
Yeah, definitely. The emails are in the chat, and then I'll also include them in tomorrow's follow-up email as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I should just want to add, the Public Art Commission, you would only need to go to them if the public art is on city-owned property, which includes the public right-of-way. So if it's art that's on private property, you wouldn't need to come to the Public Art Commission for that.
Like, I want to know who owns the pillars under the bridges.
It depends on the bridge. It's either Public Works or it could be the state of Nebraska through the Department of Transportation. I would
Okay.
say reach out to Heather for that.
Yeah, so pillars under bridges, we do have a lot of interest and issues because those are hot spots for graffiti and other, slap tags and that type of vandalism. A lot of times, if it's along an interstate or state highway corridor that's maintained by the Department of Transportation, some of those bridge pillars are actually owned by the railroads. And taggers know that. They know that the maintenance for those is few and far between, and that's why they're kind of hot spots. We do try and work with our partners at NDOT and at the two railroads to get that abated. But if there are maintenance issues, certainly you can pass it on to us and we can try and get you a contact if it's not ours. And that Public Works main reception email is a great place to post questions about bridge pillars. Because if it is under city control and you have an idea, we're definitely open to listening to that, to hearing what improvements or ideas you may have.
Yeah, I'm a graffiti artist, and there's like a hot spot for graffiti artists. So would I to teach them that we can use the public space in different ways, so then you don't have to do it against too loud, and then we make it more beautiful. And
so we have worked with various different artists and programs and helped coordinate that conversation between is it an asset that Parks and Rec oversee because they oversee public property as an asset in the right of way that we oversee, or a facility because Public Works also does facilities management outside of the public property that Parks and Rec oversees. So yeah, if you have a location or a suggestion, we can definitely help vet that for you. And I would strongly recommend that you start that conversation before you apply for a grant. Because the worst thing is you come up with a great idea and then we find out, and you get some grant funding, and then we find out that can't be completed because then you talk to the city and we find out, oh, there's going to be asbestos removal on that location and you won't be able to complete it in the year that the grant is for, or something along those lines. So starting those conversations early is definitely where you want to go.
Okay, thank you.
I should add that the February Public Art Commission meeting is this coming Wednesday, the 14th. So if you do have something that you'd like to talk to them about, email me and Heather probably as soon as you can.
Yes, I would like to attend that one. Thank you.
I was just gonna add really quickly, a couple of years ago, I applied for a mayor's neighborhood grant before I worked at the city. And my application was approved to build a pergola that accompanied our community garden on a privately owned parcel. And we built it. And then I was told by the mayor's office that we didn't have the permits that we needed. Like, we had done it illegally technically. And so we had to, before we could get refunded for our mayor's grant, we had to go to the zoning board of appeals, which costs money to get like retroactive permission essentially to build something, or to have something that we already built, because we did not do it in compliance with zoning code. So if it is any, like, it happens, but yeah, if you have an idea, and to Heather's point, like, do whatever you can with anyone at the city just to like double check. And if there are like permits involved that cost money, maybe factor that into your budget. Because we never got reimbursed for the cost of what our zoning board of appeals waiver cost. So that one came out of pocket for us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Okay, anything else from anybody tonight? Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending, especially from Planning Department, Parks Department, and Public Works. All of their information is in the chat. I'll follow up tomorrow with an email with links to the neighborhood directory, the grant applications, their emails, and phone numbers.
Excuse me, where is the chat? I don't understand where that is. I'm looking.
I think if you just I don't know, go to the bottom.
I see chat.
Do you see
okay.
chat
Yeah,
now?
thank you.
Okay. Hover was the word I was looking for, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so I'll send that email also along with the slides from tonight. So if any questions, y'all can just respond to that email and let me know. And otherwise, I hope everyone has a great night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.